there's a little bit of dread that builds up in my heart. Oh, I don't know if we can do it again.
They think that the life of an entrepreneur is really sunshine and rainbows. You and I both know that is not how entrepreneurship feels. Successful entrepreneurs that you see have failed so much more than you have.
The people who survive this, I think it's the people who don't quit. Don't you think entrepreneurship is a great thing? I'm like, no, it's terrible. It's tough. It's hard. It's ridiculously difficult.
If they knew what it really was going to feel like, I don't think anyone in their right mind would jump into that boat. It never ceases to amaze me what people who are not entrepreneurs think about entrepreneurship, especially when you're talking about the employee mindset and what they think they would do, what they think they would feel if they owned their own business.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things in life that if you've never jumped in and done it, you don't have great, really perception of what it would look like for you, what would be required for it, and how you would feel when you make that happen. But as someone who's been in the entrepreneurship trench for 7 years now, I just think there's some shocking, there's really just some shocking thought processes that I hear from people who aren't in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Of what they think it would feel like. You see all these things in the news about CEOs' pay being high, and some of the richest people in the world have made billions of dollars because they're business owners, came up with these great ideas, and they built these huge companies, and whether or not that's fair for someone to have come up with that. They think that the life of an entrepreneur is really sunshine and rainbows, and that it's simple for them, it's easy for them, and that just because they position where they did, they become this powerful person, and they just get to make billions of dollars and make that happen.
Yeah.
You and I both know that is not how entrepreneurship feels.
Yeah.
Being a business owner, the pressure that comes with it, and I just want to dive in to what it really feels like to be an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I have one question for you to start.
Yeah. Okay.
Of how you distinguish being a business owner versus being an entrepreneur, and how you see that difference. And then I'd love for you to dive into what it has felt like when you've been a business owner, when you've been an entrepreneur, and versus the perception of what people think it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we'll have to define some terms here when you say business owner and entrepreneur. But first off, the thing that I think nobody really understands about entrepreneurship is the ones who fail, nobody ever talks to them. You don't see them on a podcast, Diary of a CEO, right? No one's asked them about how they ran their business. We only see the ones who made it. And so that's why we all associate entrepreneurship with people who have big houses, drive fancy cars, get on a private jet. That's what we're talking about. And when we're thinking about man, these are what entrepreneurs actually are. But that's not really the case. We're in this entrepreneur journey, and you see the people who are out here trying to make it. There's some entrepreneurs who are on that hustle and grind, just trying to figure this thing out, right? There's others who are raising capital, who are trying to grow a business. So there's so many different avenues that you can take and call yourself an entrepreneur. But let me go back to your question, because when you're talking about entrepreneurship versus business owner, give me a little context in terms of what are you going for there?
Well, I'll tell you where my mindset goes and how I would define the two.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of business owners who are not entrepreneurs.
Okay.
I know a lot of people that have made a job for themselves where they work for themselves, but they're not entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur to me is someone who is creating an environment, creating value in the marketplace that is creating jobs for themselves and others to accomplish a mission. Someone who has vision and then builds a company to go accomplish that vision. Distinctly different from the guy who works at a pest control company that says, hey, F this company and the guy I'm working for, I'll just go spray this stuff myself. That way I can go work for me.
Yeah.
Is he an entrepreneur? Well, he would describe himself as
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
But that's not entrepreneurship to me. So if we go off that definition of entrepreneurship versus being a business owner.
Yeah.
Walk me through where you've been a business owner and when you became an entrepreneur and the feelings you had in both of those roles.
Yeah. I mean, the angle that you're coming at it with is, I guess it's broad because, yeah, I would call a guy who starts a pest company an entrepreneur. Like, he's going to have to do everything. And when I think about entrepreneurship, I kind of think about the starting point of a business. I don't care what it is. It could be the pest control company. It could be a new software startup, like whatever the case is. There is something that goes along with just the need to have a really lean team that might just include yourself. You might be the only one and you have to do everything. Like, that's kind of entrepreneurship in my mind. As the business grows, I don't know. I don't even look at those people as entrepreneurs anymore, right? If you're a CEO and you got 300 people working for your company, or you've grown to 1,000 people in the company, like, I just look at you as a CEO now. I'm not thinking about you as the one that got this thing off the ground. And to me, that's what entrepreneurship is all about. Now, I'm not going off of any standard definition. That's my definition. We don't really have
But I think
real
you're
terms
right in
around
that
this.
definition. I think that's where you make the distinguishment. If you are, and you're in this role today, so let's just use it as an example. You are the founder of HTD Talent.
Yeah.
You are also the CEO of HTD Talent. Founder, entrepreneur. CEO, employee, and also happens to be an owner in the business, a
Right.
board member,
Yeah.
a corporate figure. I agree with you. That's why we say founder and CEO, because the founder is you as the entrepreneur who built the vision for this and then created the ecosystem for other people to be successful to move towards a common goal.
Yeah.
It was scalable, it had mission, it had goals aligned in one direction, and then you put the pieces all together. Business owners create a job for themselves.
Yeah. True.
And that's how I make the distinguishment. A CEO can be a business owner.
Yeah.
A CEO can also be an entrepreneur. But entrepreneurship, as we define it, is someone that has that vision
Yeah.
and is bringing the pieces together to go make it happen. Okay, so everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. They think it's going to be this amazing ride and that it's all going to be positive, it's going to go straight up.
Yeah.
And everyone becomes very optimistic when they're starting a business. Otherwise, they wouldn't start it in the first place. If they knew what it really was going to feel like
Yeah.
and what it was really going to look like, I don't think anyone in their right mind would jump into that boat
No.
as a first time. Second time, you know what you're getting yourself into. You also
Yeah.
know what to avoid. It's very, very different. But that feeling of being an entrepreneur on a day-to-day basis, what does that feel like to you? When I say, oh, it must be so awesome. You work for yourself and you
Yeah.
just get to go build this stuff every day. That's got to be
Yeah.
so cool.
That's always the conversation. I remember when we started the company, like, people coming over to the house and like, oh, how's it working for yourself? Just owning your own job. Isn't that like something special? By that time, like, we're like a few weeks into this effort, and I'm already so deep on so many things I never thought I would have to handle. Because in your mind, when you have this vision for a company, I always tell other entrepreneurs when they're planning the company, I'm so jealous of you. I'm so jealous that you're in this mode right now where you can dream. Because I think those are the people who get into entrepreneurship. It's the dreamers, and they have an idealistic view of a company they want to create and a problem they're going to solve and customers who want this. And that's all well and good. 3 weeks later, you're on LegalZoom trying to figure out how to file your corporation. You're at the bank trying to figure out what documents you need to be able to open a bank account because your customers can't pay you yet. And then it's like, oh wait, how do I go get customers? Oh, I have to go, we don't have a database. We have, like, every single thing has to be figured out. Let's just say you have enough money. You're lucky enough, and we were, to be able to go hire employees. How do you hire an employee? We didn't have an HR team. So we got to figure out offer letters. We got to figure out benefits. We got to figure out pay. People actually want to be paid. Like, there are so many things that all of a sudden fell onto my plate that I'm so glad I had a co-founder, because we just separated this stuff. About a few weeks into it, we said, hey, I'm going to just run the business because there's so many things we didn't anticipate that have to happen. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
He jumped in and did everything else to actually grow the vision that we actually had. If we didn't have that partnership, I don't think the business would be successful like it is today. It just wasn't going to happen. But man, I didn't think of any single one of these types of things when we were in the early stages. So that's the part that, like, when people ask me, hey, don't you think entrepreneurship is a great thing? I'm like, no, it's terrible. It's tough. It's hard. It's ridiculously difficult. And so few actually survive it. If we did more interviews with the people who failed, they would be telling you all this stuff all the time. The reason why they failed, probably not because their business wasn't a good idea, but they didn't know how to run a business. They couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of where I sit when I look at it. Thinking about getting started again, man, there's a little bit of dread that builds up in my heart. Thinking like, oh, I don't know if we can do it again. I don't know if we can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you this, because I think there's 3 phases of entrepreneurship. Number 1 is that vision phase where you're coming up with a great idea. That's about 10% of the game. You're all excited, super optimistic. And then on the back end of it, stage 3 is things have worked out. And most people don't get to things that have worked out. That's also only 10% of it. The middle 80% is stage 2. And that's the stage that truly defines entrepreneurship and where people feel. The feeling of stage 2 is nothing I'm doing is working. I'm doing all of this stuff and none of it is working.
Yeah.
And that's the majority of the journey of a business and building and vision. You go from being super high in stage 1 of, oh, we're going to build this, it's going to be so awesome, we're going to add so much value to the marketplace. And when you go to implement all of that, you realize, well, that didn't work, and this didn't work, and this didn't work. Like, you've talked about it. You see setbacks, where some people see they're counting sheep. You're counting setbacks up in the ceiling as you go to sleep. That's the 80% of the game.
Right.
And if you can't handle that, that is entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Being able to handle that. And I tell you this, man, like right now, I am in the throes of it. And it feels like with 6 different businesses, I've got one business that's over here and that it's made it and things are going great and it's phenomenal and you live in that 10%. I've got a couple businesses that are in that, this is going to be so awesome, it's phenomenal. And I've got a few businesses that I feel like right now, man, nothing I'm doing is working. Yeah. I'm putting all the effort in to try to figure this out and this isn't working and that isn't working. And here's the funny thing about it. People will judge you based on the one success that you have and say, this guy's a phenomenal entrepreneur. Like, look what he built.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, that 10% you're looking at right there has nothing to do with all the rest of this that I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And you've seen that curve that they show of entrepreneurship where it's like, the pit of despair is down here and then it actually rises up at the end. And the people are, this is going to be so awesome. It's phenomenal. Having lived that journey, there is no lower low than that pit of despair. And when you're doing it not with one business, but you're doing that with 3 different businesses, it hits your self-esteem in ways that no one around you who has not gone that journey can understand. Like, do you know what I'm talking about when I say, like, nothing I'm doing is working right now? Like, you felt that. Like, talk to me about that feeling, because that's entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and we're built differently, right? Because you chose to go back and do this times 5, 6. And we've had all kinds of businesses over the years, right? Some have worked out, others haven't. You're absolutely right. You could bankrupt those other 5 companies you're working on and people would still look at you the same for the one that's actually really made it, right? And so, like, we're in this phase now with our one company, right? Where things are really clicking, right? Things are working well. We have this vision for the future and, like, all of that is coming together. So we have days where we start to emerge out of that. We get a 10% day, if you will, right? We kind of emerge up and we look over and like, yeah, this is what it's going to feel like. And then we go back down into the pits of despair and we just work through one problem after another. Honestly, the job, you just wait for the next thing to go wrong. You wait for the next thing to go wrong and you figure it out. But the people who survive this, 2 things. Number one, I think it's the people who don't quit, right? You just kind of work your way through it. And number two is they're resourceful. Like, I would not recommend to anybody to go out and be an entrepreneur if you're the kind of person where you're like, I'm not getting what I need from my HR team, or my operations team is not delivering on time. That's why my project is late. It's like, no, dude, you should not be in entrepreneurship, because you may not be good at that job, but you have to be able to go figure that job out. And once you figured it out, now you're going to be better at hiring the person who is good at the job. Like, it's that ability, not even ability, it's a mindset. It's a mindset. I will figure out anything that comes my way when it comes to hiring people, firing people, running the business, finding a way to get customers, making sure we have high quality, like all of the things that are going to work. And if you are the right kind of person, even though you're in the pits of despair, you'll start to enjoy it just a little bit. Just a little bit of you will start to have fun. And like, yeah, what's the next thing going to be? Let me just go ahead and dig. I'm going to embrace that moment and just kind of dig into it. So that's
people.
Yeah, that's my mindset. But
people.
Again, you're sicker than me because you're doing it times 6. So like,
doing it again.
Doing
it again. It
what
never
is,
ever.
Like, so but what's actually driving you through those different moments? Because you do have one that's made it already.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. This is the thing that most people don't know about starting a business that should terrify them. Successful entrepreneurs that you see have failed so much more than you have. We don't talk about them for the failures, though.
Yeah.
They try so many different things and they fail at it, and they fail and they fail and they fail. But when they are successful, and it could have all been luck, but they tried it so many times that they found one that hit the market at the perfect time and it just went to the moon. Like, I think I might be guilty of that in my business that has become extremely successful, because the timing, you couldn't have timed it any better than it worked out. But I have failed so much more than the average person who says they want to go start a business. Why? Because I put myself back in the trench. I tried this business, that business, this business, and many of them failed. Many of them failed publicly. Here's the difference of me and them. And this is the difference of an entrepreneurial mindset of someone who's going to make it versus someone who's going to quit. I don't mind failing publicly. I don't care. I'll put myself out there and market a business and nobody signs up for it. I'll do it again over and over again. That's fine. Like, I'm good failing, and I'm good failing publicly. Number 2, I'm going to move so much faster than you, because I've learned that if I'm going to fail, I better fail quick.
Yeah.
And I'm okay doing it publicly and humbling myself, but moving fast and getting off and on to the next thing if this thing is not going to work. Those 2 things right there will separate the successful entrepreneur from the person who's saying, I'll give some stuff a shot. I'll go give this a try. Like, you're not going to make it. Because if you don't want to fail publicly, you're not wanting to put yourself out there, don't even hop in, because whatever it is that you say your company's going to do, and you sell this vision to people that come to work for you, the investors, you're probably going to end up doing something different and moving in a different direction.
Yeah.
And you've got to be humble enough to know, hey, here's what I thought back then. I've learned all of this stuff now, and now we're moving in this direction.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do this forever. And then a week later, it's like, well, actually, I think we should also shift over here and make this happen. People look at that and say, oh, he's hopping around. Like, no. I'm solidifying the vision based on the mission that we started with. But the how we get there is always going to be changing over time.
Yeah. You know, it's one thing I've always seen with entrepreneurs is whenever we have a new idea, first thing we do is we go run it by someone else who's an entrepreneur. I don't blame the entrepreneurs who fail as much as I used to anymore, because here's one thing that I'm noticing. I'm noticing this about entrepreneurs in general. We have a really hard time telling people that their ideas suck. We have a really hard time saying, no, that's a shitty idea. Don't do it. And here's why. Instead, we listen and we ask a bunch of questions. Oh, you thought about this, thought about that. Oh yeah, this side of it's probably a really good idea, because you could probably, if you go from this angle, it's gonna, there's a market there for that. And we don't say what we really think about it. And then 30 minutes later, I'm on the phone with you and you're like, yeah, that idea was awful. It's just not going to work. And then we let that guy go forward and start a business. I'm not saying that he needs our permission, but there has to be more, like, we as an entrepreneur community need to do a better job of telling people, because we know how hard it's going to be. Like, hey,
Well,
man,
I disagree
your
with you
idea
on that
sucks.
point. I disagree with you on that because do you know how many people told me, don't get into a business selling single-use plastic. Hey, don't quit your job to go do Steve, have you thought this through? The world's changed. You can't import stuff from China and go sell it to people. And they'd send me these articles about why my business was going to fail. Everyone who's been successful has had people tell them what they were setting out to do was a
Sure.
terrible idea. So I think we have to caveat, even when you go to other business owners, that they might say, don't do this.
Yeah.
But I'm still kind of like, hey, but if you think you should, go make it happen, because you got to blaze your own path. If you're going to let other people tell you what you should and should not do, then you probably don't have what it takes to make it anyway.
Yeah.
And the entrepreneurs who make it have been told no so many times
Right.
that that's that personality that says, I'm going to go do it anyway and prove everybody wrong. And they're probably not going to make it. We're going to be right 95% of the time that business is going to fail.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this. You've got some good friends, got some bad friends. You bring a business idea to a friend. Here's how a good friend evaluates a business idea. They look at what your potential is, and then they tell you whether or not this idea is big enough for you to go pursue. Is the problem big enough for you to solve? I brought a $10 million idea to an investor buddy of mine here in Vegas, and you know what he told me? Hey, Steve, think bigger. Think bigger. Don't bring me any business ideas that are not at least going to be $100 million company. Because your potential, you've already done the $10 million company.
Yeah.
Your potential now has to be to shoot for the $1 million or the $100 million company. And I think that that's the mark of a good friend who's saying, hey, you got way more potential than this.
Yeah. I'm just saying, tell them why it's not going to work based on everything you know, and that's where you leave it. That's what we're not doing, is telling them why it's not going to work. We kind of encourage them along the way. So I think we can do a better job.
Yeah, 100%.